Oh boy, gang, do we have a doozy. Let's get right into this. We don't need an explanation. Smash the like, hit subscribe. You'll have fun watching this. I had a riot. Oh my goodness.
Round of questions, beginning with Mr. Janice for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here. Minister, the budget said the following, and we've raised a lot of concern about this, as you know. The budget says, Budget 2025 announces the government's intention to propose legislative and regulatory amendments to address integrity issues related to private educational institutions by generally limiting access to the Canada Student Grant for full-time students to students attending public institutions and not-for-profit private institutions within Canada. As I've pointed out, this proposal in the budget would eliminate funding for students who are pursuing essential vocational training, which is only, as it happens, available at private institutions. I do want to note that the Budget Implementation Act, which we're discussing today, does not implement the provisions that were foreshadowed in the budget with respect to this. It makes some changes, but they are very different from what is in the budget. Is the government still committed to the policy as articulated in the budget, or has the government decided to change course on this?
The government is committed to making sure that when young people purchase education, that education actually is accredited and is actually valuable in terms of their productivity and their work experiences. And so this... I am
going to jump in to just insist on a specific answer to a very simple question. Is the government committed to the budget provisions specifically as they were laid out on page 217 of the budget that I just read? Is that still the government's policy?
The government's policy is that we will ensure that the way that we invest through Canada Student Supports means that quality education is the outcome.
Minister, you're a minister of the Crown. It doesn't seem to me that it would be that difficult to say if you stand behind the budget or if you don't stand behind the budget. Do you stand behind the budget, the specific provisions on page 217 in the budget that I just read out? Do you stand behind those provisions?
As I said, the focus of the government is to deliver supports to students so that the expenses they incur for education are actually resulting in quality education that results in labour attachment.
Right. That's a great objective. Do you agree with and stand behind the policy laid out in the budget, page 217?
What I will repeat is that the focus of the government is to make sure that students who are utilizing Canada Student Learning Supports will result in education that is valuable to them. What we have seen is an increase
Minister,
in institutions.
It's incredible to me that you can't give a simple answer to the question about whether the government still stands behind the policy. Well, so the simple question is, does the government maintain and continue to have as its policy, the policy articulated on page 217 of the budget? It's just yes or no. Do you stand behind that policy announcement in the budget?
The work that the government is doing is to ensure that federal student financial assistance that provided to students is utilized in institutions that will provide
that's just not an answer to the question. I think the public can see that. I wonder if I can ask the Deputy Minister, Mr. Thompson, if you don't mind me putting you on the hot seat. You often speak on government policy, even though you're not responsible for making it, you're responsible for implementing it. So is it your understanding that the section I just read from page 217 is still government policy? Is it still government policy?
We have full intention to implement the budget measures as they were laid out by the government.
Okay. Thank you. That was a clear response. I disagree with it, and I'm disappointed by it, but it was a clear response. The government still intends to implement those provisions. Do you know when the government expects to implement the provisions that I've just read out, given that they were not included in the Budget Implementation Act? Again, to the Deputy Minister.
Well, listen, I think we all understand that pieces of legislation have to pass this House for the budget to pass so that Canadians can get the relief that all of you have been saying is so essential.
Provisions that I'm talking about are not in the Budget Implementation Act. Mr. Thompson has confirmed that they're still government policy. So when does the government have a timeline for proposing those measures? Again, we oppose the provisions explained in 217, but I think students would like to have some certainty around when their grants will be cut. So What's the plan there?
Well, it's difficult to project a timeline when we see the kind of obstruction in the House for everyday pieces of legislation, including the BIA. So I wouldn't want to put a date on it since some of the levers are in your hands.
We can't be accused of obstructing provisions that have not been presented in the House.
Well, I would imagine that.
Can I just try to get one more question in the minute I have left? Minister, why do you think food cost inflation is twice the level that it is in the United States?
Well, I think we've covered this question in the House quite a bit, and we've got a number of conflating situations in Canada, including, as you would note, the tariffs that we've experiencing as a country. But you can yourself. I think you're from the western part of this country. You yourself can speak to
Minister,
some of the cattle farmers who are actually feeling quite despondent.
How do you think tariffs are impacting food inflation?
Look, there are a number of impacting.
Which tariffs specifically?
The focus here is on the things that we can control, as I said in my speech. And there is no doubt that Canadians are feeling the impact of food inflation. But I will tell you what it's not, if this is where you're going. It is not, and as many economists have shown,
you're the minister. I'm not asking what it's not. I'm asking what it is. Why is it twice the United States?
Well, food inflation in Canada is directly related to the number of foods that we must import and to the growing challenges of climate change.
Is there an issue with translation?
Appel au règlement, Monsieur le Président. On a entendu que
we are hearing the interpreters saying inaudible. So that is very clear. My colleague is having fun speaking fast and interrupting the minister, but
all participants to be respectful that the meeting must be translated, and that's what I shall say. You've got 1 second.
1 second. Okay. Why is food inflation double in Canada what it is in the United States?
You know what I'd say, Mr. Chair, is that time and time again, when this government puts forward measures to help with the affordability issues for Canadians, we see the opposition delay and stall and use tactics that actually reduce the ability for Canadians to get those supports. That's what I'm focused on, what we can control and how we can help families.
It's not an answer, though.
Your time is up. Thank you, Madam Minister. Madame de Rocher for 6.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, gang. Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Smash that like, hit subscribe, join us in the chat room. It's a lot of fun. We've got the best chat room online around Canadian federal politics, and everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. We're going to watch a few clips from the last question period till now, like the time in between, not from question period, from other things that happen on Parliament Hill. So smash that like, get your popcorn ready, hit subscribe, let somebody else know where the real politics are happening. That's it. Let's kick this off. You know how we do it. We'll be right in time for question period. Don't worry about that. We'll get there when it's interesting. Here we go. Aaron, Canadian Looney. Smash the like, hit subscribe. Thank you for joining us, folks. Say hello in the chat room. We've got a great chat room. Let's go. We're live.
Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid. Okay?
WTF.
Canada's broken because we're stupid.
Still think that it would be helpful for Canadians to know exactly what you would do when it comes to tariffs. So why are you being so reticent to talk about that?
Because I'm a good negotiator. I have negotiated a number of situations in the past. I know how to manage crises.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups. The globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Madame Goodrich for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister and officials for being here today to speak to this. I just want to start out the school food program. You guys have been boasting about it feeding 400,000 kids. Is that accurate?
Let me just get my numbers here. That's the target. That is the target for the program.
So then ESDC recently commissioned $1 million research into the school food program to see how many kids it actually feeds after admitting that the claim of 400,000 was basically guesswork. Why?
Whenever we work with provinces and territories, we are reliant on their reporting of data. And so part of the work is to ensure that we get the data we need from provinces and territories. I will say that all of the provinces and territories are working closely with the department so that we can assess how this additional boost to any school food programs they might already be delivering is helping. The other thing I would just point out is that the school food program is in reflection of many calls by many advocates to fix the patchwork of systems that exist across the country.
And I appreciate this. As a mom, I don't want to see a single kid go hungry. I don't know any parent that wants to see any child go hungry, especially at school. We know that is so critically important. What is, however, very concerning is you rolled out $1 billion project. You boasted about the fact that you were feeding 400,000 kids, and then you had to commission a study for $1 million to prove how many kids were actually getting fed. Like, why not spend that $1 million just feeding kids?
Well, you say that you deeply care about kids going hungry, and yet every measure that helps parents feed their kids, you vote against. And in your
vote against wasteful government spending.
No,
Minister,
in your own
respectfully,
province of Alberta, this program is helping to feed 58,000 children. And in your own province of Alberta, parents are saving $13,700 per child per year in childcare, which
Minister,
you also voted against.
That only helps the parents that can actually access the childcare. And this is one of the big problems. You guys announce big programs, you announce big spends, but you don't actually make sure that the kids that actually need it the most are the ones that are getting it. And so in my home province of Alberta, I'm very proud of the work that the government of Alberta has done in terms of creating new spaces for childcare, in terms of ensuring that low-income families have access to these supports, and in ensuring that the utilization is up there for childcare. I'm also really proud of the fact that Alberta has had a school food program for decades. However, you have done nothing as a government to make sure that the people that need this support the absolute most are the first ones in line. That concerns me.
Well, it was a pleasure to work with Minister Nicolaides to extend the Alberta Early Learning and Childcare Agreement and to talk about the essentiality of this program, not just for parents, not just for young people who are getting that quality childcare that puts a parent's mind at ease, but for the economy of Alberta and Canada. Look, there is incredible research, and I want to thank Madame LaRouche for giving me the history of Madame Marois. So important to recognize that this is decades and decades of advocacy, largely by women,
Thank you,
to
Minister.
ensure quality care. And it turns out to be the social infrastructure for a growing economy.
Thank you, Minister. So there's, according to your own government's data, there's approximately 6.6 million school-aged children. You guys have designed a school food program that feeds 400,000 kids. Guesstimate on your part. Guess. We know right now that there are 700,000 kids that are going to food banks every single month. That leaves a gap, based off of your guess, of 300,000 kids. Like, what's up? Like, why such a disparity?
Well, this program was never meant to replace already existing provinces' programs of school food. The challenge was that different school boards had different regimes. Some school boards were not able to afford a school food program at all. And the federal government agreed with the provinces and territories to help out because we agreed with the premise that no kid should be hungry at school. It's not meant to replace provincial programs. It's meant to augment provincial programs.
Thank you, Minister.
And I want to thank the provinces for doing this work because I think everybody agrees that growing brains are essential to the next generation of successful
Absolutely.
adults.
I have very little time left. You've had time to consult with your officials, I'm sure. My colleague, Mr. Jennis, asked about food inflation. You said tariffs. Which tariffs are impacting food inflation? Just which tariffs?
I think the real question.
No, you said tariffs. So I'm asking specifically which tariffs impacted food inflation. You said it. Are you just speaking, or is there an actual answer here?
Thank you, Ms. Goodrich. Your time has gone by. We'll move to Madame Reynolds for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming here today. So I just wanted to clarify, I don't know if you thought I was laughing about the Bill C-15 thing, but I wasn't actually, being the new guy here, I don't know bill numbers either, and I said to my colleague, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Thank you for clarifying that. It felt a little personal, and there are a lot of bills flying around.
I don't know the bill numbers either. So anyways, this government is standing in the House every week talking about nation-building projects and the need for more skilled trade workers. One of the biggest issues that we have in this country with the skilled trades recruitment is retention. For many, many years, the federal government offered the Apprenticeship Completion Grant, which paid $2,000 per apprentice upon completion of their program. Also, the federal government offered the Apprenticeship Incentive Grant. This grant paid also a total of $2,000 per apprentice, which was given throughout the program. Additionally, there was the Apprenticeship Incentive Grant for women, which was paid a total of $6,000 for women in the trades. These grants helped dramatically with retention. They actually helped me when I was going through my apprenticeship 18 years ago. Can you explain why, with all the discussion around these nation-building projects and trade worker shortages, this Liberal government decided to cancel these programs in March of 2025 and did not bring any of these incentives back in Budget 2025?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds, and thank you for representing skilled labour in Parliament. It's great to have a tradesperson. I know there might be others, but certainly you've been very vocal about your experience, and that's helpful. My son as well is a skilled tradesperson, and I can tell you that I'm very grateful that you also were able to avail yourself of the apprenticeship grant, because what our data has shown is, in fact, not many people are actually utilizing the grant, and it's not driving completion in the way that it was designed. We have every intention of bringing back financial supports and grants to apprentices, because I agree with you. Money may be part of the barrier, but we're also working with the CBTU and other skilled trades organizations to understand how to deliver that in a way that's really going to break through. And just in the experience of my sample size of one, but certainly up close, personal, that journey can be really fragile for individuals where they're experiencing, for example, layoffs and seasonal work. And so we will be coming back with how that's modeled.
Can be tough, yeah.
Based on.
I went through it myself, yeah.
Yeah. So based on the
I'd like to get to my next question,
of apprentices and skilled trades workers.
So another program that was offered by the federal government over the last number of years is the Apprenticeship Support Program. This program would pay employers that hired a brand new first-year apprentice up to $10,000 for a newcomer or someone from an underrepresented group, specifically women, or $5,000 for anyone else. With all the virtue signaling around needing more trades and specifically women in the trades, how come this Liberal government has made it harder?
We are actually relaunching that support for employers in April of this year.
The issue around apprentice retention are always with lower level apprentices, typically first and second year. That's because they aren't paid a lot and the grants help significantly make ends meet. As I said, it helped me a lot. Can you explain why and when the government is standing up and praising the trades, apprentices can expect less from this federal government than they did in previous governments, as I expected so many years ago?
Again, the data that we have on the apprenticeship grant shows that it really wasn't getting to the hands of apprentices nor of finished Red Seal tradespeople. So what we are doing is working with Red Seal's trades organizations and apprentices to better understand how we can support people immediately. I personally think part of the challenge with the apprenticeship grants was the delayed nature of it. And the reality is that sometimes when people are laid off, they need the money right away, not after a particular block of study. So we're looking at all options right now to do exactly what you're suggesting, which is have the right support in place that's going to help people get through first, second year, and all the way to Red Seal.
Well, thank you, Minister. Another issue that comes up, and I've experienced it myself, is there is a delay in EI for apprenticeship. Usually you have to observe the 2-week waiting period when going to school. Has that issue been addressed in this budget?
Well, that issue is addressed right now through the EI temporary reforms that were put into place to deal with the unjust tariffs. That's not just for tariff-related employment loss. That's for everybody. So there's no waiting period at all for anyone who's claiming EI. And of course, we're carefully monitoring the situation to see if we need to extend those measures. But obviously, we've had really positive feedback from workers and including tradespeople about these changes because you're right. Waiting when you're laid off is very difficult.
Have these been permanently implemented, or is this just related to the tariff reliefs?
These have been temporary changes to relate to tariffs, and we're examining what to do in the next period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. It's 5 minutes. Yeah, you were well over it, but it was Ms. Falk for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for taking the time to be here. We appreciate having you come to our committee. As it has been stated already in this meeting, food prices are absolutely out of control, and we know that food bank usage has nearly doubled since 2019, and that's with 2.2 million people, Canadians, including children, visiting food banks monthly. So almost 1 in 5 food bank users has a job. So that means they're working and they still cannot afford to purchase groceries. So a family of 4 is paying nearly $17,600 a year to eat. That's about $1,000 more than last year. And the school food program, the GST top-up, this helps some families. And your government has made things so bad that any relief whatsoever is welcome. But these measures don't actually lower the price of food. They don't fully offset the skyrocketing grocery prices, and ultimately, they leave millions of Canadians behind. So my question is, what is your message to the working Canadians, the ones who don't qualify for these programs and they don't get any support, and they still can't put food on the table because groceries keep getting more and more expensive?
What I would say to all Canadians is that the work that we're doing, especially for low-income Canadians, is bearing fruit. In fact, we doubled the working income tax benefit a number of years ago, something your party voted against. So again, there's a pattern here of talking about
respect, Minister,
talking about supporting people.
Minister, with all due respect, my question was about the working Canadians that do not qualify for these benefits, who still cannot put food on the table. Their kids are going to school hungry because they are working 2-3 jobs. I've heard this from constituents. They're working 2-3 jobs and they still can't get ahead, but they can't even meet where they need to be. What is your message to those Canadians who don't qualify for these programs that your government is putting forward?
So for a family with 2-3 kids, they for sure are qualifying for the school nutrition program because their children are in school. If you're talking about a family without children, as I said, we have a working income tax benefit that has been doubled for single individuals. If you're talking about seniors, we've increased OAS. And if you're talking about, again, that family...
Minister, with all due respect, I was talking about working...
Patty Haidu sucks so bad. Like, she is brutal.
Canadians.
With children?
Regardless. So even if their kids are in school, what are they doing on Saturday and Sundays? How are they eating? Well, they're going to the food bank.
I guess it
and
depends.
How is that acceptable? How is that acceptable that we have working parents who are working all the time, their kids are becoming latchkey children because their parents have to pick up extra jobs so they don't have anybody at home after school? Because I will note that most of the government-run daycare institutions work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, not those extra hours in the evening or even accommodating for shift-working parents. So what is being done? And what does your government have to say to those working people that don't qualify for the GST top-up or for the school food program? Because there's a swath of Canadians that aren't seeing any relief from your government. What do you have to say to those Canadians?
Well, what I'd say to the residents of Saskatchewan is it's been a pleasure to work with the minister responsible for early learning and childcare. In fact, Saskatchewan just extended a 5-year agreement for early learning and childcare and has committed, as they always have, I understand, to a fully public system of childcare. It truly is a role model for many other
My question
provinces.
wasn't about childcare.
Parents are paying now $10 a day in that province.
Order for a moment. It is the member's time to ask the question, but please give the witness, in this case it is the minister, a reasonable time to give a reasonable answer, and then you can ask for the floor back. Please.
I'll continue then. I wasn't getting an answer for the working Canadians, so I will follow up with my next question. How do you and your government justify the taxing of the growing, the shipping, and the selling of food when these costs are inevitably passed on to the consumers and make groceries more expensive? I know that you and your government don't or say that these are imaginary taxes, which is not true. If you visit any farmer, they will tell you that these are passed on to the consumer. So how does your government justify increasing these taxes, ultimately increasing the price of food?
This argument that the Conservative Party is litigating has been debunked by economist after economist after economist.
Okay, but how about the farmers that are paying the bills? Their implement bills, they're paying for their machinery.
Thank you very much, Ken. That's very generous, unnecessary, but appreciated. Thank you so much.
They're paying for their seed, they're paying for their fertilizer, they're paying for all of those items that ultimately then get passed on to the consumer. I just don't appreciate that. This is what's happening. Being debunked, this isn't the case. Maybe if the Liberals actually went to a farm and spoke to farmers, they know how this would go.
Please respect the chair. Oui, Madame LaRoche.
Je veux juste rappeler que oui.
C'est
ça pour la traduction, c'est très difficile.
Yes, this is very difficult for the interpreters, Chair. Thank you, Ms. LaRoche.
A minute to respond to the question that was directed to you without interruption.
You know, I think a responsible government focuses on, the real challenges that our families are facing and the real solutions that help families. And what doesn't help families is rhetoric that's been driven repeatedly without any basis in reality. What families want is the help right now. And you have a choice, Madam Falk. You can vote for the kinds of things that your own province is asking for, which is investments in early learning and childcare, the $15.8 million in federal funding that's helping that province expand school food programs, the 90 organizations that will hire Canada Summer students this year and this summer. These are the kinds of things that families are saying are helpful, and we'll continue to focus on families here.
Thank you, Madam Minister. And Ms. Falk.
Minister, there's a couple of questions that I'd like to go over with you today. And in your 2021 government...
Just to back this up, this is a Minister of Veterans Affairs, like the person that's supposed to take care of our veterans, Jill McKnight. She's lame. Fraser told me is going to grill her down a couple of rounds.
2021, your government privatized veteran rehabilitation services through a $572 million contract to PCVRS, approximately $104 million per year. The Union of Veterans Affairs employees calculated this contract costs 25% more than public service delivery. Now you're implementing a 7% budget reduction. So let me understand this. You've increased costs by 25% through privatization. Veterans are reporting worse service, and your response is to cut the budget by 7%. Our Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs will soon be conducting an in-depth study of this contract. Can you explain to this Finance Committee why taxpayers should pay an extra 25% for something that is performing worse than what came before?
Sorry. So I thank you, Mr. Tolmie, for your question and also for your service to Canada. I'd like to be clear. We are not cutting to the benefits and services that are provided to veterans. We are making an adjustment to the rate of reimbursement for cannabis for medical purposes. The contract that you mentioned for PCVRS, it has connected veterans with a broader network of health professionals across the country. I think.
Okay. Well, Minister, when I sit in this chair and I look at veterans and they hear that costs are being cut and they're not being provided the service, there's questions. And so right now the math is not lining up here. So let's do some math together. With 94% of your budget going to veterans benefits, that leaves 6% for operations, approximately $468 million. The Prime Minister wants to cut 7% cuts across government, which would be $546 million from your total budget. You claim that no services will be cut, yet achieving 7% savings would require eliminating your entire operational budget and then some. Can you reconcile these numbers for me?
So this budget is actually demonstrating an investment in veterans. We are investing $184.9 million over 4 years and $40.1 million ongoing in long-term funding that both stabilizes and modernizes the disability benefit service. We are not cutting. We are investing in veterans service delivery.
Okay, Minister, when I invest money, I put money into something. So when I hear that you're cutting, that is not an investment. That is a reduction. So can we try that answer again?
We are not cutting benefits and services to veterans. We are making an adjustment to the rate of reimbursement for cannabis for medical purposes to align with market rates. Veterans continue to receive the same access to benefits and services that they have received and will continue to receive.
So then let's look at the 7% that you want to cut across the board, which includes Veterans Affairs. Can you explain that to me?
As I said, we are making an adjustment to the rate of reimbursement. We are not making a cut. We are making an investment in the benefits and service delivery to veterans of $184.9 million with $40 million ongoing.
Okay, so let me ask, how, if you're going to invest, there's always got to be a better rate of return. And we're not hearing that.
Brought in the fact that you are the associate on defense and housing. We've got a few moments left, but boy, when I was on the Defense Committee, we had some staggering reports of the squalid conditions of housing. $1.4 billion, yes, you may be able to construct some housing units with that, but given the horrific state of housing, the 7-year backlog as it was, what do you say to CAF members who are getting rent increases from your department?
So when it comes to CAF housing, we are looking at innovative solutions through private sector partnerships to give our forces safe and affordable places to call home. This is one of the ways that we are accelerating processes to get more housing available for CAF members, and we are continuing to make investments in housing.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We will continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for joining us here today. I really appreciate you taking your time to be here. I'm just going to start by reading a couple of headlines from over the years. In 2024, the Globe and Mail, there was an article with a headline, "The promise of government official accountability is vanishing along with their texts." From 2025 in CTV News, "Hypocrisy is next level. Canadian officials criticized for using disappearing messages on Signal." And then just to start off this year in January, from Blacklock's reporter, there was a memo that was sent out effective January 26 telling staff to delete in-house chat posts within 15 days. And the quote from the article was, "Keeping it longer increases risk and does not align with information management principles." Were you made aware of this decision prior to it being enforced by the government?
The administration of the retention policy and management of information is the authority of the TBS, Treasury Board. So we're not being informed when these policies are being issued. We are aware that government have retention policies, that they have also put in place a system that delete automatically some messages or team messages. I am not against proper information management as long as people are aware that what they have to do with documents that actually documented decisions and actions and policy decision making. So there has to be, with the retention policy, proper messaging to the employees on how to properly manage their information so that Canadians can access that information, because as you know, without documents, we don't have access to information.
Yeah, and I think there's some obvious interest from the general public in what could be said in some of these messages, right? I mean, there's certainly some value in how decisions are being made. Are you concerned, though, with the fact that 15 days would be where they have this set? I mean, that's a pretty quick turnaround for a message to be deleted. And I know the Access to Information Act requires, 30 days for a response? Is that the timeline?
Well, on top of the retention policy, what I'm worried about, and actually I issued a letter this week to the institutions, is they have to be aware that when an access request comes in, all records have to be processed and treated and retrieved, including transitory documents and messages. So if they don't have a system that is put in place to stop the deletion or the automatic deletion, we may end up losing some of those documents that are responsive to an access request. So the Access to Information Act does not differentiate in the type of messages and the type of records, but I understand that for proper information management, it is okay to get rid of transitory messages and transitory documents as long as the decision, the discussions, there's minutes, there's a proper way to capture, like you say, those decisions so that ultimately that could be retrievable and accessible.
In Division 5, Part 5, your government is once again asking for unprecedented powers to be able to exempt any entity or company from any law or regulation in Canada with the exception of the Criminal Code. Would this include the Conflict of Interest Act, yes or no?
Well, I think you're referring to something which is called the regulatory sandboxes, and I just want to bring that to the committee's attention.
Minister, I'm not asking what it is or why it's there. This is very concerning. If this is passed, would that exempt any entity determined by the Prime Minister or any minister to exempt a company or an individual from the Conflict of Interest Act in Canada, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I was just trying to provide background. Canada is catching up, I would say, with other OECD
Minister,
countries and the G7.
This is a very concerning fact that's inside the budget. Would, after these powers are granted to a Prime Minister or minister, would they be allowed to exempt a company or an individual to be exempt from Canada's law, which is the Conflict of Interest Act, yes or no?
Well, I was just trying to say, Madam Chair, that regulatory sandboxes is a tool that has been requested by...
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Mr. Fragiskatos?
It will be a very long meeting, Madam Chair, if we don't hear the answers. The question's being asked, but we're not able to hear the answers.
Thank you, Mr. Fragiskatos. That's not a point of order. Mr.
The minister refuses to answer because this would give unprecedented powers once again to this government. And Canadians are worried. In fact, even the Toronto Star, a non-conservative friendly paper, has written about this. That's how concerning this is. Would this being passed give the Prime Minister or any minister in the government exempt to any company or individual from the Conflict of Interest Act? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I know some colleagues are more interested in the questions than the answer, but let me try to inform Canadians. Regulatory sandboxes are a tool which are very well used by OECD country, the G7, and actually, I would say, Madam Chair, Canada is catching up.
Does it include the Conflict of Interest Act being exempt? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, as I was saying, Canada is catching up, and the
Minister,
Canadian...
I'll take that as a yes, and that's very concerning. So I'm going to give an example to you. And again, I'm just asking if you can give me a yes or no. If a company like Brookfield has been looking to get a contract from either the Prime Minister or any minister in the government, would they be exempt from the Conflict of Interest Act, knowing very well of the Prime Minister's declared conflict of interest after this passes? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm sure the business people who are watching this morning are a bit surprised. Everyone thought in this country that the Conservative would be business friendly. This is a request from the business sector and Canadian innovators for Canada to catch up with other G7 countries.
Mr. Fragiscatos, point of order.
Again, we want to hear the answer. The question's been asked. There's been no interruption there. We want to hear an answer.
Thank you, Mr.
On
Fragiscatos. On the same point of order, Mr. Kelly.
You know, we had this minister earlier this week where I asked a series of questions that he did not.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. This is turning into debate. Neither of these are points of order. We're going to continue with Mr. Halan. Thank you.
Minister, I will take your non-answer as the conflict of interest the act would not apply to a company or an individual if any Prime Minister or Minister grants them those powers and a contract under the government, which is concerning because that means a company like Brookfield that obviously has conflict of interest with the Prime Minister could be awarded a contract and been given Canadians money without having the Conflict of Interest Act apply to them with these powers. Now, I have another question for you. Under this division and this part, would this also give the power to exempt any company or person from the Investment Canada Act? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, let me try to explain to Canadians that what we call regulatory sandboxes is subject to a number of safeguards. Let me just list a number of them.
So would the safeguard, let's go off of that. You said it has a safeguard. Does the safeguard help to prevent a company like Brookfield from being awarded a contract and exempt from the Conflict of Interest Act? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, as I was trying to explain to Canadians, there's a number of safeguards in the Act.
Does the safeguard include conflict of interest, yes or no?
Madam Chair, as I said, I feel there's some who are more interested in the questions than the answer, but Canadians, I think, would rather hear the answer.
Minister, this is very concerning that you can't answer this.
Mr. Fragiscatos, point
I
of order.
don't like doing points of order like this, but again, he's trying to answer. He's trying to answer. It's on decorum. How's that? He's trying to answer. We can't hear an answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fragiscatos. Mr. Halan, you may continue.
Another example, Minister, in 2022, when you were the industry minister, you used the National Security Review provisions of the Investment Canada Act to order Chinese investors to divest holdings in Canadian mining companies. Now your government is cozying up to the communist regime in Beijing. Very, very clear question here. If these powers get passed, does that not give a minister power to exempt Chinese investors from the National Security Review in the Investment Canada Act, letting them buy up holdings in Canada's critical minerals? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, it is the responsibility of any government to protect national security of Canada and the national economic security of the country.
Would these powers that you're trying to get not exempt any Chinese company from the Investment Act? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, let me go back to the limitation that are included. And again, Canadians would be surprised because what the Conservatives are trying to portray is an instrument that is being used by about every G7 country and every OECD country. in the world, because innovators want to have sandboxes, but you need to have guardrails and safeguards. That's why in the Act it provides for limits, time limits for the exemption. The exemption needs to be in the public interest. It needs requiring to protect public health, public safety, and the environment. And I would say, Madam Chair, I would probably suggest to the Conservatives
Minister, these
to talk
decisions
to
get to be
business
made
innovators in the
behind
country
closed
who have
doors
demanded
after you pass
an
this law.
expansion of the regulatory sandbox in the country in order to be able to innovate like other
Not once,
countries
Minister,
of the
have
G7.
you said anything about not having the Conflict of Interest Act or the Investment Canada Act exempt at all from after these powers are granted. That's very, very concerning. I hope you can see why Canadians are concerned about this specific provision being passed by you. Because behind closed doors, your government can grant any company, whether it has conflict of interest with a minister or the prime minister, or a country like Beijing or in Beijing, if a Chinese company wants
Thank
to
you,
come
Mr.
here.
Halan. That concludes your time. We will continue with Mr. Lee.
Minister, in your opening remarks, you asked for this bill to be passed swiftly because of the measures that are being introduced. However, as you know well, there is a poison pill in this bill in that you're asking for ministers to have the power to exempt entities, corporations, or individuals from any federal law except for the criminal code. Given the potential for abuse of this clause, would you consider removing it so we can move on and review the rest of the bill in the spirit of collaboration and speed of passing of the bill?
Well, I want to say thank you for the question, and thank you also for your contribution. You've been in the banking sector for many years, and I'm reminded by your leader's letter to say time to turn rhetoric into reality. Listen, I just want to say to you, and obviously this provision was specifically asked by the business sector in Canada to be at par with other G7 nations. So I always have an open mind, but I'm always very conscious of the impact it would have on the Canadian innovators and Canadian businesses, which want to have in a very constrained, like I say, the guardrails, that you can put around things. If you have suggestions with respect to guardrails.
With all due respect, this is a legal sinkhole. There are no guardrails. And you compare us to the G7 countries. G7 countries actually use regulators to run these regulatory sandboxes that you referred to. They rely on limited waivers, no action letters, supervised testing plans, not broad ministerial powers that you are asking for. It's not an apples to apples comparison. And on the topic of the business community, I have a letter signed by 43 organizations that have serious concerns with this. And they say ministers would have radically new discretionary power to decide when and how federal legislation applies and to whom, but laws should apply equally, regardless of the status, wealth, or power. We insist that the federal government withdraw this undemocratic section of the bill.
Was that a question, or you want me to comment on that?
Comment on that.
Well, listen, I would just say there are clear time limits. There are clear exemptions, so it has to be in the public interest. It has to preserve public health, public safety, and the environment. We tried to mirror, I would say, what was done in other G7. Like I said, this is not something new. That's why I'm surprised but I respect the comments from the people who wrote the letter, but I'd say this is not a new tool. I mean, the OECD report, I think, dates back
Minister, I just explained the differences. It does not concentrate the power on the ministers, which is what you're asking for. So you, as minister, can choose the winners or losers. Entities, individuals would be inclined to lobby you personally rather than look at the rule of law. It is not a fair comparison with other G7 countries. Other G7 countries have regulators with very specific limitations. It's not the same. So with this provision, this is why it is called the King Henry VIII provision. So would you remove it because it has the potential of abuse?
Well, we have a set of guardrails. If you think of other guardrails that you think would be in the public interest, we're always looking at issues in order to move forward with an open mind. I'm also
Minister, just to outline some of the risks. It would allow the violation of the Conflict of Interest Act. It would prevent citizens from seeking documents under the Access to Information Act, the Extractive Sector Transparency Measures Act, and there's a number of acts that could be violated at the prerogative of the minister. How is that reasonable?
Well, I would say I was just about to say, if you have suggestions with respect to guardrails, because I'm mindful of the people who wrote the letter and I respect their view. I'm also mindful of all the innovators and even the Council of Canadian Innovators who may have a view with respect to what I'm trying to achieve. And I'll be very transparent with you, as I should be in front of this committee. I'm trying to put Canadian innovators at par with other G7 so that we foster innovation in the country and don't hamper that. But I'm open-minded if you have any thoughts.
We will continue now with Mr. McDonald for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister and the Deputy for attending today. So as I get home on the weekends, I get a very positive response to Budget 2025 in Prince Edward Island. And I've met with many groups that have been excited about the infrastructure investments that are in Budget 2025. Community groups, municipalities, even the provincial Conservatives in PEI want this budget passed. They want to be able to apply to the programs that's in the budget. One particular thing that I know we did last year, shortly after I was elected, we had stakeholder meetings across the country. Yourself, Parliamentary Secretary Turnbull, and Secretary of State Long went around, listened to Canadians. One of the things that you listen to in PEI, because I was at the Charlottetown Roundtable, was that we had to increase the capital gains exemption for small businesses. This particularly affects rural communities because we have a lot of fishers, farmers, and small businesses, and the real benefit is that if we allow them to transition their business to the next generation, it keeps those businesses in our small rural communities, drives our economy in an area like Cardigan that I come from. And so I just wonder if you could elaborate on this $250,000 increase in tax exemption, what it will do for those rural communities.
Well, I want to say thank you. And thank you for bringing the voice of rural Canada to this discussion, because, I come from rural Canada as well, and I think it's important. And you talk about small and medium-sized businesses, which represent, 98% of all the businesses in the country. So having tax measure programs, grants, loans that would fit them is particularly important for me to support. You're quite right. The capital gain tax exemption is a tool in the toolbox that we have. There are many more. I spoke about the SHRED tax credit earlier today, which is also something where we work with a number of people in the private sector to say, how can we make it more efficient? What I hear a lot from businesses, like I'm sure you do, what they want is stability and predictability, cutting red tape, making sure we're more efficient, having more predictability when it comes to project assessment, and certainly having programs that are fit for purpose in respect of a number of industry. I think you mentioned the fishery industry, for example. There's a number of things that we have been contemplating to make sure that it will have the tool. You may recall when I testified earlier this week in the measure of C15, they were C19, sorry. C15 is this morning, C19 was earlier this week. There were a number of structural measures as well to support transformation, seafood transformation, fishery transformation, increasing production of food in Canada. And I think that's important for food security. But you're right, I think the budget 2025, like you, my experience going across the country, I think it speaks to seniors, it speaks to young people, speaks to worker, speak to farmer, fishers, small businesses. I think they realize that the world is changing. I mean, a lot of questions I get from my colleague is that where we are, and I think Canadians they see the wind of change, and they see this country to adapt. They see that this is a moment for us to come together. They see this as a moment to invest in our future, support Canadian for now. That's why C-19 was about a boost and a bridge, because this is, like I was saying before, this is a generational budget, because if you look at the investments we're making, it's comparable to what you've seen in Germany. And Germany is the largest economy in Europe. So that's why this budget has been, I would say, well received, not only in Canada, but I would say, investors around the world see Canada taking structural measures that will foster investments, will foster growth, innovation. Going back to this regulatory sandbox, that's why you've heard my comments, is that this was a request by the innovators in Canada. So I have an open mind by definition, but I'm also mindful of the other side of the coin of people who say, well, on one end, we're being asked to reduce red tape by Canadians, by the opposition, and ourselves as well. On the other end, when we're trying to make it more easy for people to innovate, we get criticized. So you see the position I'm in today.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. MacDonald. We will continue with Mr. Kelly now for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, in your opening statement, you referred to Canada as an energy superpower, and indeed we ought to be one. But your government, in November of 2015, canceled an existing Pacific pipeline. It was one of literally the first things the cabinet did when elected in 2015. In 2018, you passed the Bill C-69, which precluded any pipeline construction in Canada, which your government presided over a 10-year capital flight from the energy industry. And in 2025, you have granted yourself and with the opposition, we supported you because this is what it's come to, did support extraordinary new powers to, since you won't get rid of the red tape, to just give yourself the power to cherry pick which projects red tape would not apply to. The Prime Minister said that new major nation-building projects would be built at speeds unimaginable. I could imagine a pipeline commencing production in, say, a year. Could you tell me on what date will a pipeline be approved and construction begin?
Well, I would say you should just look at what we did with Trans Mountain. We are the government who made things happen because we built Trans Mountain. Actually, I was with the CEO of Trans Mountain. When you talk about the year, I would just say you should probably talk to the CEOs of the industry.
Okay, since you won't answer the question, and you mentioned Trans Mountain, you chased private capital out of Canada, nationalized a project, and then presided over a 500% increase in the cost of it once it was nationalized. But I'm going to ask you again, and I'd like you to answer the question, what year can Canadians expect construction on a pipeline to begin?
Like I said, you seem more interested in the question than the answer. I was about to go with Trans Mountain, and I was just with the CEO. When you suggest a timeline like that, I would say talk to the CEOs of the companies. They would tell you that the measures we have taken, the major project office is really making a difference.
Okay, I'm very much interested in the answer.
Chair. Point of order.
Mr. Fragiskatos?
We want to hear the questions. We're hearing the questions. We want to hear the answers.
Thank you, Mr. Fragiskatos.
On the point of order? On the point of order?
This isn't a point of order.
We'll continue. Minister, you have not answered my question. The reason I am interrupting you is because you're not answering the question. Will you answer the question on in what year will pipeline construction begin?
It's not that I don't answer, it's that you don't like the answer. That's very different. Canadians at home can watch and they understand that.
The answer would be a year. Give me the year. If you don't know the answer, that's okay too. You can say you don't know, and then we'll move on to another question.
Well, I would say I speak to people in the industry, and they see Canada with the major project office and what we've done as an enviable jurisdiction for them to do investment. So that's what I would say. I mean, if you talk to the people, I was with the CEO of TMX, Trans Mountain, recently. This is a pipeline in operation, and it got built. Okay, and I think you should you should, in a way, recognize that at least. It got built and it's in operation.
I would say no thanks to your government. You chased out the private builder that would have built the thing already. But that's a distraction and not an answer to the question. You mentioned the Major Projects Office. When will it announce a pipeline approval, and when will construction begin?
Well, the Major Project Office has a list of projects that are ongoing, and I can tell you discussions we have had with a number of oil company. They're looking at interesting projects in Canada in the oil and gas sector. People realize that the framework we have put together is an interesting one for them to invest.
Are there any pipelines on that list?
Listen, we like I said, Canada is recognized now as an energy superpower.
Okay, so that's no. On what date or what year, through whatever means possible, can Canadians expect a pipeline to be?
Listen, I'm trying to explain to you that you should ask that to proponents. Proponents are the one who put projects forward. What I'm saying to you is that we have good discussions.
But no proponent is going to put anything forward because they don't know what the rules are. They know that you've given yourself the power to cherry pick which projects, the rules that you have put in place that would otherwise preclude construction. So in what year do you think it's reasonable for Canadians to expect a pipeline to be built?
I'd say that's not what we hear from CEOs. I would invite you to talk to global CEOs of major oil companies and oil and gas companies. That's not what we hear from them, and I was with a number of them recently. That's not what we hear from them. That's the only thing I can share with you.
Great. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We'll continue with Mr.
In 2022, you forced Chinese investors to divest from holdings in Canadian mining companies using the National Security Review provisions in the Investment Canada Act. Now you're asking for...
Hi, Mr. Rath. It's great to meet you. I appreciate you making the time today.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on today. Thank you.
I listened to some of the interviews you've given to other media this week, and you were disputing the reporting that garnered all that reaction from the premiers. And I wanted to actually just get you on the record.
Oh, sure.
So we can
the
clarify.
Financial Times piece, I'll say for the record, it was fake news. I'm very careful with anybody to say that we haven't been offered any money by the United States. We're not seeking money from the United States. We're conducting a feasibility study on the availability of a sufficient credit facility to get Alberta over the hump in the hypothetical eventuality that Ottawa is going to play hardball and try to cut off our money once Alberta declares itself independent from Canada. So, that FT article, starts out covert meetings between U.S. officials and fringe separatists. It was ridiculous. It was just a hit piece, by the globalist media. I'm really disappointed in the FT, actually. I used to read it when I was going to law school in London, and the paper's really gone downhill if that's the kind of trash they're publishing.
So what I had noticed when I read it was that I had read other reporting previously that you had made trips to the United States. So
there's no doubt. No doubt we're making trips to the United States.
Can you just explain what you are doing?
We've held press conferences to tell people that we're going to the United States. We're exchanging information with senior officials in the U.S. State Department over the aspirations of Alberta for Albertans for independence, and talking to them about the types of things that would help Alberta move forward as a free and independent country. And it's already paying dividends. I mean, we had Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, the second most powerful man in the world, repeating what we told the State Department officials back in December, that aspirationally Alberta would love to have a pipeline through the U.S. Pacific Northwest to the West Coast, because we're sick and tired of David Eby threatening us with a veto and saying we're only going to get a pipeline over his dead body and all of the foolishness that comes out of his mouth. And of course, the reaction to that from David Eby, when he saw that his power was being taken away and that he no longer had power, he was no longer going to have power to constrain oil and gas development in Alberta on behalf of his communist masters in China, right, was to jump up and down and have a hysterical little hissy fit and say that, we're engaged in treason and that real Albertans don't support independence. I mean, it was the most ridiculous display of on behalf of a premier that I've ever seen. He should be embarrassed, really.
If we take David Eby out of the equation for a second, can you understand how on the face of it, Canadians would view, some Canadians outside of the ones that support your cause, who are not necessarily unempathetic to the frustrations expressed by people in this province, but who would view the idea of, people here meeting with a government that has, spoken the way it has about this country as a whole, as problematic and seeking money to make this happen.
I understand that there's a lot of Ontarians and people in Quebec that suffer deeply from Trump derangement syndrome, but we're not doing anything untoward. It's absolutely, from our perspective, we're just conducting due diligence on behalf of our fellow Albertans. We're serious professionals. I mean, I've argued cases at the Supreme Court of Canada, for goodness sake. I mean, we take what we're doing very seriously, and obviously the attitude of the United States towards Alberta independence, which incidentally is overwhelmingly enthusiastic, is something that informs our movement going forward. If the United States said, oh God, we can't tolerate that, flies in the face of, the communist New World Order, we'll slap a 300% tariff on Albertans if they leave because we want you to remain resource slaves of the communist government in Ottawa, it would be a totally different conversation. But that's not the case. We're gratified that it's the case. And quite frankly, the Trump administration shows Albertans far more respect than is shown to Albertans by the government in Ottawa. Do you think three of us could get a meeting with Tim Hodgson to talk about the need for a pipeline to the Pacific Northwest so that David Eby can't continue to hold us hostage? Of course not, because they want us to be held hostage. So I understand that there are Canadians that are upset, especially in Ontario, that when Alberta leaves, that Ontarians for the first time in their lives are going to have to pay their own bills and pay the bills of the Maritimes that we've been paying for years. I understand that's upsetting to people, but they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Do you believe, though, that the motivations of the people you're meeting with or in the Trump administration are altruistic? Like, do you think they want what's good for you and people who support your cause, or do you think that they're trying to leverage this to get the upper hand against the country of Canada as a whole?
I've studied foreign policy at the university level. I have an honors degree in political science, and I have an honors degree in law from the London School of Economics. Don't you think that communist Ottawa is leveraging communist China against Alberta? I mean, come on. I mean, we live in the world of realpolitik.
But you don't mind being a pawn in that fight?
We're not a pawn. I mean, we're talking to them about our aspirations, and we have our goals and objectives. So, we're not a pawn. We're actually more like a rook or a queen on a chessboard, moving forward in the direction that we want to move freely on the board. The pawns are the provincial premiers like Danielle Smith that are being manipulated by Carney and Eby and communist China to do their globalist bidding, as far as I'm concerned.
When you mentioned that you've met with people in the State Department, you feel as though that message has been conveyed to Scott Bessent. That's why he made the comments he did. How high up are the meetings that you're taking? Are there names, for example, of people that you're meeting with that we would recognize offhand?
I'm not sure about that. Probably. I mean, we're meeting at a very high level. People in our meetings are going, direct.
Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to say. I mean,
why not?
We're not, because we're not. We have an agreement with the people that we're meeting with that we're not disclosing the identities of the people that we're meeting with. So
why not? May I ask?
Well, because it's an agreement. So that's all.
But again, would it be reasonable to question the motivations of making that
Well,
agreement?
that's probably why we're not talking about it. We don't want them being bothered by people from the press in Canada asking them silly questions. They don't want to be wasting their time answering questions from the press, right? And we're fine with that. We don't care. I mean, we know already that our meetings are paying dividends when the U.S. Secretary of Treasury is announcing the fact that the U.S. would be open to a pipeline through the Pacific Northwest to take David Eby and communist China out of control of the Alberta oil field.
May I ask then, in a different way, have there been conversations, among yourself or people in the movement with, for example, as high as President Trump?
No. Well, I mean, I haven't. I'm not sure about David Cameron. He's not really part of our movement and part of what we're doing. He's the leader of the Republican Party of Alberta. He claims to have been to Mar-a-Lago and whatever. We don't need to meet with President Trump. We're really technicians when it comes right down to it, right? At the end of the day, our next delegation to Washington, we're going to have bankers, economists, corporate lawyers, et cetera, to help with this feasibility study that we're conducting, right? And we're going to be putting together, what a potential deal memo could look like, and put together a complete dossier so that we can just hand it over to whoever the government of Alberta is in power and say, hey, if Ottawa is giving you a hard time, here's an easy way out. There's a large credit facility that's available through Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or whoever in the event that Ottawa tries to cut off your money.
On the question of feasibility and the situation that you just lay out, what does it say that if you are preparing for Ottawa, as you characterize it, to play hardball, that you would then lean on credit or whatever it ends up being from the United States? Like, to the people who support your movement, are you not kind of moving from one master to another?
The entire world runs on credit. How much does Canada rely on the United States? If Secretary of Treasury Bessent, so what? If Secretary Bessent wanted to end Canada tomorrow, it would take one memo to all of the bond rating agencies, Moody's, Standard and Fitch, and Poor's, to say that Canada's a poor risk because of all the various things that the United States is going to do with Canadian credit, and Canada would be over. So Canada is being supported by the United States. So just stop with this silliness and trying to create this conflation somehow or other between the Alberta independence movement and being beholden to the United States. I know it's a fear-mongering talking point of the mainstream media with regard to Alberta independence, but we're not buying into it. It's ridiculous.
Well, let me respectfully, if you don't mind, challenge you and just ask, look at what happened based on the scenario you just have outlined because of our dependence on the United States.
All Canadians will be cheering you on every step of the way. We're so proud of you both. Keep your sticks on the ice and bring home the gold.
The honourable member for Scarborough-Woburn.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise in the House today to mark Black History Month, to honor Black excellence, resistance, resilience, and brilliance across our great country. 2026 marks the 30 years since Black History Month was formally recognized in this House. However, we know that Black history goes beyond centuries here in what we call Canada. From early settlers to abolitionists, community leaders, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, public servants, and politicians, Black Canadians have touched all parts of Canada's history and continue to shape this great country. Black History Month is not only a time to reflect on our past, but to celebrate our achievements and recommit to building a future rooted in equity, inclusion, and opportunity for all. This month and every month, we recognize Black History Month here in this great country, Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I would like to pay tribute to two paramedics in the Richmond-Arthabasca riding whose courage and composure should be recognized. On January 8th, when a major fire broke out in a building on King Street in Richmond, Serge Boulanger and David Leclerc, paramedics with the Coopérative des Travailleurs d'Ambulance de l'Estrie, showed great bravery. They quickly arrived at the scene of the fire and realized that there were still vulnerable people inside. Without hesitating, they entered the smoke-filled building to rescue an elderly tenant who was completely unaware of the danger. Their quick, smart, and safe response saved a life and helped patients and victims. They went above and beyond their duties. They demonstrated great responsibility, courage, and humanity. On behalf of the House of Commons, I want to thank them and highlight their outstanding commitment. The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympic Games will officially begin tomorrow. Over 3,000 passionate athletes from around the world will compete in the sports they have honed to perfection to get to the Olympics. Over 200 athletes will proudly represent Canada with passion and courage. For the first time, there will be more female Canadian athletes than male Canadian athletes at the Games. Sherbrooke will be proudly represented by Kim Boutin, Félix Roussel, and Jordan Pierre-Gil in short track speed skating, Antoine Gélina Beaulieu in long track speed skating, and Marion Thénault in freestyle skiing. Martin Fréchette, a nutritionist, will keep our athletes in top shape. To our beloved Olympians, may this great sporting event be an opportunity for you to push your limits and live your dreams to the fullest. Give it your all, have fun, challenge yourselves, and most importantly, remember that here at home, the whole country is rooting for you. Go Canada, go! Go Sherbrooke, go!
The Honourable Member for Terranova, the Peninsulas.
Mr. Speaker, Newfoundland and Labrador has a long history of building boats and protecting North America during the wars. Unfortunately, it seems like this Liberal government is overlooking our province as they build their icebreaker maintenance facility. In my region alone, we currently have 4 industry ports sitting idle. We have Marystown Shipyard, Cowhead Facility, the Bull Arm Fabrication Site, and the retired Navy base of Argentia. Newfoundlanders have used these sites to build vessels, ferries, and even large oil rigs. With all these previous projects, our tradespeople have become the best boat builders in the world. But the last Liberal decade, these sites have been empty. And now, Newfoundland and Labradorians have 74% of its tradespeople unemployed. 74%. Mr. Speaker, we have the ports, we have the people. Let's get a government that gets our people to work.
The honourable member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this year the Sopilka Ukrainian Dance School, located in my riding of Winnipeg South Centre, is celebrating 55 years of preserving and sharing Ukrainian culture. Sopilka began as a small Ukrainian language class and grew into one of Manitoba's most respected dance schools. The school was founded in the early 1970s by Vicky Adams, a constituent of mine and a lifelong champion for Ukrainian culture, education, and community life. Her extraordinary contributions were recently recognized with a King's Coronation Medal, reflecting decades of volunteerism and leadership, including her deep involvement with the Ukrainian Holy Family Church. For generations of young people, Sopilka has been a place where discipline, history, and cultural pride are passed down. Through performances across Manitoba and beyond, Sopilka has helped ensure that Ukrainian traditions remain vibrant, visible, and proud. Congratulations to Vicky Adams, Artistic Director Christina Freikas, the dancers, instructors, families, and alumni on 55 remarkable years, to many more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Carleton Trail Eagle Creek.
Canada's economy is on life support, and the country is in recession watch. Bloomberg reports per capita GDP is still falling, and the economy is growing at only 1% annually. GDP growth in November was 0%, and real GDP is expected to decline 0.1% in the fourth quarter. And the news for business is bleak. Businesses are postponing their expansion plans. These numbers matter. When our economy isn't growing, Canadians are getting poorer. The Liberals want to blame outside forces instead of taking action here at home. The Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7, but hasn't gotten rid of a single anti-development law or bureaucracy. He only needs to listen to our ideas and introduce a plan that gets his government's barriers and tax burdens out of the way so Canadians can build.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, many of us were dismayed to hear that Quebec would not be represented on the Canadian men's hockey team at the Milan-Cortina Olympics. Quebec has always produced outstanding players, and the QMJHL has won more Memorial Cups in recent years than the Ontario or Western Leagues. Yet, Quebec players are absent from the team, and French may be absent as well. This decision by Hockey Canada shows a total lack of consideration for Quebec. But, surprise, Quebecers will be able to cheer on one of their own at the Olympics. Phil Pietronero is from Saint-Eustache. He played part of his junior hockey career with the Val-d'Or Foreurs, where he contributed to the team's victory in the President's Cup in 2014. Today, he is an Olympian as a member of the national team of Italy. From Saint-Eustache to Milan-Corto via Abitibi-Témiscamingue, Phil Pietronero will allow Quebecers to cheer on one of their own by proudly shouting, Viva Italia!
Member for Waterloo.
Mr. Speaker, International Development Week is a moment to reflect on how global challenges are connected and how smart investments can create lasting change. One of the major drivers of food insecurity is climate change, especially in the world's most vulnerable communities. That's why Canada is investing in women and economic empowerment as part of its international development efforts. I joined the Mennonite Central Committee Canada, Canadian Lutheran World Relief, and the Canadian Food Grains Bank for a breakfast on the Hill. Speakers shared that Canada's ODA investments are delivering results, and that when women have access to resources, education, and leadership opportunities, families eat better, communities grow stronger, and local economies become more resilient. This International Development Week, I would like to thank all organizations, team members, volunteers, and donors for your contributions in making Waterloo, Canada, and the world a better place. Your efforts demonstrate what it means to be Canadian, and by working together, we can deliver prosperity through partnerships. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for York-Durham.
The Prime Minister promised to build homes at a speed not seen since the Second World War. That was the rhetoric, but it was just an illusion because the CEO of Build Canada Homes came to Parliament this week and told us that, in fact, just 9 homes are built and move-in ready. Just 9. That's the reality, and it's a stark and disappointing reality for young Canadians who face it every day. Their ambition to own a home has turned into disappointment, and that disappointment is turning into defeat. New home sales are down 45% in the GTA, and the Canadian Home Builders Association warns that we are in for a lost decade of home ownership. Well, on this side of the House, our Conservative message is one of hope, always has been, and we have offered the government several positive solutions. Incentivize towns and cities to reduce development charges, tie funding to results, not just promises, reward those who build. So for the sake of the next generation, will the Liberals please stop obstructing these ideas and get out of the way?
The Honourable Member for Orleans.
Down Friday, Mr. 6, the 2026 Olympic Winter Games will officially open in Milan, Cortina d'Ampezzo in Italy. I want to extend my best wishes to all Canadian athletes competing, with a special cheers to those representing our national capital region. Zachary Connolly, Mike Evelyn O'Higgins, Antoine Cyr, Paul Poirier, Kelly Osborne, Isabelle Weinman, Catherine Stewart-Jones, Rachel Oman, Emma Miskew, Cédric Brunet, Jared Schmitz, Anna Schmitz, Valérie Grenier. Je ne peux m'empêcher d'exprimer.
I cannot help but express how proud I am to highlight the participation of our local hero, Yvanie Blondin, from my riding of Orleans. Mr. Speaker, she will defend her title in speed skating.
To every Canadian athlete, Canada is behind you all the way. Go Canada, go!
The Honourable Member for Bow River.
Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago, the Finance Minister met with major grocers promising to stabilize food prices. Since then, Canada now leads the G7 in food inflation. Now he's rolling out another temporary rebate, about $5 a week, for a $300 grocery bill. Sure, you'll take it, but it barely makes a dent. Meanwhile, according to Food Banks Canada, almost 20% of food bank clients are not employed full-time. Food inflation is now hitting working Canadians hard. Food inflation is now twice as high as when this Prime Minister took office. Local food banks in my riding are feeling it too. The Wheatland County Food Bank reported record demand in 2025, the highest numbers they've ever seen. The Liberals can blame global factors all they want, but the reality is their fuel standards add 7 cents a litre today, 17 tomorrow, and that hits farmers, truckers, and the cost of food for every family. You would think Liberals would stop obstructing common sense solutions and actually cut the cost of food.
The Honourable Member for London West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week we mark International Development Week, a time to recognize the people in partnership that help build a safer, healthier, and more prosperous world. At a time when the world is facing growing conflict, humanitarian crises, climate change, and economic uncertainty, international development work is more important than ever. I want to thank Canadians working across international development sector in NGOs, multilateral institutions, community organizations, and public service who dedicate their skills and compassion to improve the lives of those around the globe. Their work support women and girls, strengthen health and education systems, respond to emergencies, and helps communities build resilience in the face of instability and poverty. Often working in difficult and uncertain conditions, they reflect the best of Canada's values: cooperation, respect, and shared humanity. International development is all about partnership, dignity, and long-term impact, and remains essential to building a more stable and connected world for all of us. So on behalf of this House, I want to thank them for their commitment and their service. Thank you for your work.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Over the weekend, I had a heartbreaking conversation with Corallan Halmagen, a friend of mine who had just learned of the loss of his heroic son, Gunner Sebastian Halmagen. Since Confederation, countless Canadians have answered their nation's call to serve, sacrifice, and all too often to never come home. Prime Minister Borden, speaking in 1916, remarked, and I quote, "On the solemn truth that the nation is not constituted of the living alone, there are those as well who have passed away and those yet to be born. So this responsibility comes to us as heirs of the past and trustees of the future." Sebastian told his father, who shared with me, that he wanted every young person to know that sacrifice and commitment to the Canadian Armed Forces was noble and worthy. I want to thank him for his service and his ultimate sacrifice. Offer my prayers and love to his wonderful family. And on behalf of all parliamentarians, say that we will never forget what he gave us.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today, as a part of Black History Month, we are celebrating the history of Black people, their resilience, and their important contributions to Canadian society. In Bourassa, this is an everyday reality because we have a significant Haitian population in our riding. This solidarity and their contributions enrich my riding and my colleagues' ridings too. For generations now, Black women and men in Canada have contributed to all walks of life, to all spheres. They strengthen our social fabric and they make us a more welcoming and inclusive country. Black History Month is a time to remember, but it's also a time to be proud and a time of recognition. This reminds us that diversity is a source of strength for Canada. Mr. Speaker, beyond our differences, beyond where we come from, we are one people united by the values of respect, dignity, and solidarity. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians need hope. Hope for affordable groceries. Since this Prime Minister took office, he has promised to be judged by grocery store prices. Costs are rising twice as fast amongst the other G7 countries. And I asked the Prime Minister why. It's because of our weak dollar, he said. But he needs to protect it. Can the Prime Minister explain why he gave us a weak dollar and expensive groceries? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I would like to quote the Leader of the Opposition from 26. He invited his colleagues to turn this rhetoric into reality. We see obstruction right now. Canadians asked us to present a plan to grow the Canadian economy, Mr. Speaker, to protect Canada's sovereignty and to ensure that Canadian families, our seniors, the young people, have a promising future, Mr. Speaker. Can the Leader of the Opposition, will he support the government to pass our budget? Rather than quoting people, he, in 2023, said that he would stabilize grocery prices before Thanksgiving. Now, it's been more than 2 years, and grocery prices are rising twice as much. We have the worst food inflation amongst the other G7 countries, and this finance minister who caused these issues, he's still in power. Why does the Prime Minister continue with these taxes and inflationary deficits, and why is he depriving Canadians of affordable food? The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, allow me to help the Leader of the Opposition. He wrote in 2026 that it's time to leave rhetoric aside and to look at the reality of the situation. I know that the Leader of the Opposition was very concerned about his own future at the time, but if he saw the measure we announced to ensure food stability, there'll be a benefit that will help families. There'll be $500 million to have more food, and more importantly, he has the opportunity to support the government to help Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Under this Liberal government and under that particular minister, auto production has fallen by half. And the Prime Minister was elected promising that he would protect the auto industry and get a deal with the U.S. by July 21st. He broke both of those promises, and since there have been job losses at Cami Ingersoll, GM Oshawa, Stellantis Brampton, and PACCAR au Québec. Mr. Speaker, today he finally flip-flopped on his cherished EV mandate, but is bringing in a new subsidy for people to buy American-made automobiles. Why is he forcing Canadian workers to pay taxes to subsidize American vehicles?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I know it's Thursday, but I have good news for the Leader of the Opposition. I have very good news for him, and I have good news for Canadian. It's called the Canada Auto Strategy, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the Prime Minister of Canada today was standing up for Canadian workers, for Canadian industry, for the future of the industry in this country. They can yell as much as they want on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, but the workers know what we have done for them. They know what we're doing today and what we're going to do in the future. Mr. Speaker, we'll build Canada strong.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that minister was in charge of industrial policy. He's the Minister of Industry, while automobile production fell in Canada by half. And now under this Prime Minister, we've lost 5,000 more auto jobs. Here's the deal that he's announced today. The American president will continue to tariff Canadian-made automobiles going into the U.S., while Canadian taxpayers will be forced to subsidize American vehicles coming back into Canada. Instead of subsidizing American vehicles and killing Canadian jobs, why not take our plan to take the GST off Canadian-made automobiles?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I will tell him that under my watch, for the first time in Canadian history, we brought a European manufacturer to invest in our country, Mr. Speaker. It's called Volkswagen. It's called St. Thomas. It's called the car of the future, Mr. Speaker. Volkswagen has invested a record amount in Canada, Mr. Speaker. They can yell as much as they want, but the people in St. Thomas know who did it. They know what we're doing today, and they know we're going to support our worker, our industry, and the auto sector in this country, Mr. Speaker. Let them continue to criticize.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's literally yelling for us to stop yelling. This is an example of the Liberal illusion. The Prime Minister has put in charge of finance the industry minister who is responsible for auto production in Canada falling by half. Wow. And the present collapse of auto production and jobs in our country. Now, the Prime Minister broke his promise to negotiate a deal with the U.S., and now he wants to subsidize U.S.-made vehicles. Why not take taxes off Canadian-made vehicles so that we can bring home jobs to our country?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I don't need to speak loud because Canadians know what we did. If he wants to look at what we did under my watch, Mr. Speaker, let him talk about Windsor, Mr. Speaker, and about Nexstar. What we did, Mr. Speaker, is to see where the puck is going. That is truly Canadian. Making sure that we build the auto sector of today, but the auto sector of tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. We understood, and not even just Canadian, Bloomberg said that Canada would have the most complete supply chain when it comes to EV, Mr. Speaker. We are proud of our record. We are proud to invest in Canadian workers, and we'll build the industry of the future together.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Bloomberg just said that the economy in Canada is shrinking under that minister and this Prime Minister, but from failed economic Liberal policy to failed immigration Liberal policy, Liberals have unleashed an extortion crisis by allowing Bishnoi gangsters into our country without screening. Now, they are allowing them to stay here by even after they're convicted if they make a phony refugee claim. Conservatives moved a motion at committee to kick extortionists out of our country after they've been convicted. Liberals voted it down. Wow. Will they join with us, stop obstructing, pass an amendment to the law so that we can kick extortionists and fake refugee claimants out of Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to extortion, the Conservatives have been uniquely unhelpful in advancing the laws that police are telling us they need to combat extortion. I received a message this morning from Patrick Brown, the Mayor of Brampton, saying that the Peel Regional Police have asked him to pass along the message that the Strong Borders Act is necessary to provide lawful access to help law enforcement break up extortion rings. Mr. Speaker, for months they have obstructed measures that were going to make bail and sentencing tougher on extortionists. It's one thing to stand up and make noise in the House House of Commons. It's another to get the laws adopted. Let's do the job Canadians demand.
The honourable member for Berthier-Maskinangé. Mr. Speaker, some retirees have not received their old age pensions for 9 months. Civil servants warned the government last summer that this was due to Curam. But the Liberals didn't listen to the public servants. They gagged them. And the government's instructions to the civil servants was to absolutely not tell people that the delays or payment errors are because of Curam. Instead of attacking whistleblowers, why doesn't the government help retirees? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Department is doing everything it can to rapidly solve the issues. This includes enhancing training so that personnel is able to deal with requests faster. There are positive signs are showing that this training is paying off. Our Bureau contacted the member across the way to see if they have any urgent cases, and I would ask them to contact me so we can respond. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinangé. Mr. Speaker, there are seniors who are not receiving their old age pensions, and instead of helping them, the Liberals are trying to protect themselves. It's extremely worrisome because the same Curam system is experiencing problems with the payment of old age and also EI and the federal pension plan. By minimizing the problems instead of solving them, the Liberals are creating the perfect conditions for a storm that would make Phoenix look like a simple storm. When are they going to fix the problems instead of intimidating public servants? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Our government is protecting seniors. We are offering dental care, enhanced OAS, and lodging for seniors. We're modernizing the digital and benefit system. And I would ask the member across the way to give me the names of these people, and we will help them. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, one wonders if the minister reads French language media, because if she did, she would stop downplaying the problems of retirees who are not receiving their old age pensions. And if so, they would know that civil servants have resorted to acting as whistleblowers because they're so fed up with being silenced instead of being helped. Enough is enough. There are errors in pensions because of the Curam software. All civil servants are saying so, and the Liberals seem to be putting more energy into covering up the problem rather than solving it. When are they going to take action? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I do read French language medium, but I also work in English and in French, like many people in this House.
Mr. Speaker, we have focused all our resources on making sure that we get through the waiting list. Mr. Speaker, it is shrinking every day. I thank the civil service, by the way, for taking the effort to learn this system and learn it well. And as I mentioned, we've been in contact with these members of Parliament. If they have urgent cases, please send them to me. We haven't received any names yet.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
3 years ago, the Finance Minister promised to stabilize food prices, and he did, at record highs. Canada now has the worst food inflation in the G7, twice as high as when the Prime Minister took office and twice as high as the US. And now the Minister offers another temporary rebate that won't lower the price of a single item, while admitting his so-called historic summit that he got CEOs to come to Ottawa for was a failure. They voted against our common sense motion yesterday to lower food costs. Why won't they just take off the taxes off of food?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
The real question, Mr. Speaker, is why won't the Conservatives vote for the plan, the Prime Minister's plan, the Prime Minister's economic plan, the one that gets projects built quickly, that puts $1 trillion of investment into our economy, that uses Canadian lumber, Canadian steel, Canadian ingenuity, and the great union work of Canadian brothers and sisters to build our country strong? When, I just want a date from the Honourable Member, when will they pass the Budget Implementation Act, the Prime Minister's plan to build Canada?
The Honourable for Thornhill.
Speaker, my colleague knows that I'm talking about a grocery plan, but it doesn't actually lower the price of groceries. It's a $10 coupon on a $300 grocery bill, and it's insulting. And the rebate won't lower a single price. That's, of course, after they put forward a budget, which this wasn't even in. Meanwhile, they keep hiking the fuel taxes, the packaging taxes, driving food costs higher, and blaming everyone else and their decade of failure for it. Why won't they lower the prices? If they won't do that, why don't they take the taxes off of food?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, you know what's insulting to the constituents of Thornhill? When that member votes against the very things that they themselves are saying are useful. In fact, not just her constituents, but certainly the food banks in her riding would say that the announcement the Prime Minister made on the GST, on the essentials benefit, and on strengthening our food security, and on supporting food banks, and on supporting producers is exactly what we need to do for food security in this country. She needs to get on board and stop voting against the very constituents she represents.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
The Prime Minister is doing everything possible to ignore the reality that Canadians are facing in their daily lives. Food inflation in Canada is twice as high as it is in the United States, and the temporary measures that the Liberals are offering will not result in a single grocery price reduction. They had an opportunity to collaborate yesterday and pass our motion, which would have lowered prices at the grocery store, but they voted against it. Why is it that the Prime Minister's personal agenda always comes before the needs of everyday Canadians?
Good question.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we have a Prime Minister with world-class business and economic experience. We've cut taxes for millions of Canadians. And just last week, we announced a groceries and essentials benefit that will put up to $1,900 in the pockets of working families. The Conservative leader has never had a job in the economy. He continues to obstruct. He continues to talk rhetoric. It's time for that leader to get on board, help us build Canada strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Well, this Prime Minister is traveling around the world and making big speeches, but what is he really achieving for Canadians? Food inflation is twice as high as when the Prime Minister took office, and Canada now leads the G7 in food inflation. The Prime Minister promised to be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Yesterday, Conservatives tried to help by presenting a real solution to lower grocery prices for Canadians, yet the Liberals voted against this common sense motion. So will the Prime Minister now eat his words because Canadians can't?
Wow.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister is doing is creating investment in Canada, investment that has made it such that Canada created more jobs than the United States. Not more per capita, not more per capita, more jobs than the United States. This Prime Minister, I hope he keeps traveling and bringing home those jobs, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, Canada leads the G7 in food inflation. Prices are rising twice as fast as in the United States, and yesterday the Liberals voted against the Conservative plan to lower food costs. The industrial carbon tax is driving up costs for farm machinery, for fertilizers, and for food processors. When you tax the farmer, you tax every Canadian. When will the Liberals work with us to cut this unnecessary industrial carbon tax and the 17 cents a litre fuel standard tax that are driving up grocery prices?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague from British Columbia is asking a question about something that's incredibly important to all Canadians. And you know what? This government has taken steps to address this. We are introducing the groceries and essentials benefit, which is going to put money in the pockets of families so that they can acquire the things that they need. A family of four will receive up to $1,890 this year and $1,400 for the next 4 years. We're taking action to support the families in BC.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg au Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we know that since the Liberals have come to power, grocery prices are up, the cost of living is up, and for a single-parent family, it's harder for them to pay for rent. Can the Prime Minister confirm that all the members of the Cabinet agree with the idea of personally helping vulnerable people to have access to affordable housing? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, it's important to take account of the needs of our constituents, and the strategy we're adopting is one that's based on giving back purchasing power to Canadians. And that's essentially what we're focusing on. For us, it's important. But in this strategy, there are food strategies. There are also job creation strategies. And we also need the cooperation from the opposition, not obstruction. Thank you. Just to specify, I won't be voting personally. Well, the Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, I think my colleague across the way did not hear the news, but in the Journal de Montréal this morning, we learned that a single-parent mother is being kicked out of her housing, and this member realized that she's showing a lack of empathy and morals. Honourable Government House Leader, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if this has any relationship with anything to do with our government administration. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals should never have cancelled the incentives for the purchase of EVs. So it's good news that they're being reinstated for vehicles manufactured here or in countries with which we have free trade agreements like Europe. But the problem is that the federal government is blocking affordable EVs from Europe. Ottawa has decided that these cars, which are good for everyone else on the planet, are not good enough for Canada. Will the government offer people a choice by allowing European electric cars?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the contrary, we welcome these EVs because our rebate applies as part of the free trade agreement, including that with Europe. So our auto strategy includes a lot of incentives to attract people to increase our future in electric vehicles in Canada. That's exactly what our policy is doing. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, reinstating incentives for the purchase of EVs is a small step forward, but it still doesn't erase the Liberals' setbacks and bringing EVs in. It won't lead to lasting mobility. They cut $5 billion from the public transit fund while subsidizing oil companies to the tune of tens of billions. They're also agreeing with Alberta to build a new dirty oil pipeline, even as they claim to be promoting electric transportation. Why is it that when it comes to the Liberals, they take one step forward but 1,000 steps backward?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate my colleague's question. But once again, it's the opposite. Our announcement today includes a national network for EVs with an investment of $1.5 billion. So this is a national project which includes Quebec to welcome this green future and EVs in our country.
The Honourable Member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
New home sales in the GTA have fallen to their lowest level in 45 years, putting 100,000 jobs at risk. Home ownership among 30 to 34-year-olds has dropped from 62% to 52%. Young Canadians are losing hope. 93% of Gen Z and millennials are worried about housing, and nearly half of them are planning to leave their home communities. The Prime Minister promised to help Canadians buy their first home. So after nearly a decade, why are sales collapsing, builders laying off workers, and ownership is getting further and further out of reach?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's a good day to be asking that question. We've introduced the Build Canada Homes Act this morning. For precisely, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that young Canadians have access to affordable housing going forward. We've dedicated $13 billion in the budget. We need the support of members in this House to pass that budget to invest in young Canadians. We need the support. We don't need obstruction on the Build Canada Homes Act to make sure we have a lean, mean agency to deliver that funding to young Canadians. Thank you.
The honourable member for Harrison-Muskoka.
Well, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that the minister is talking about his Build Canada Rentals project, but home ownership is what's collapsing. In 2020, 69% of starts were for ownership. Today, it's 49%. New home sales are down 45% in the GTA, and builders are laying off workers. So it's a very simple question to the minister. Do you really, truly believe that creating a fourth federal housing bureaucracy without reducing taxes or fees or all the approval delays will really make it easier for Canadians to buy their first home?
Yes or no? The Honourable Minister for Housing and Infrastructure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm concerned that the member opposite doesn't care about renters. In my city, half of the population rents housing. And certainly we do not discriminate against those who choose to buy or rent. Many Canadians don't have a choice. That's why we have to make affordable housing options possible for all Canadians, make sure they have a safe home. We don't need any delays in this House to the budget or to the Build Canada Homes Act. We need to deliver affordable housing for Canadians. I hope the member will support us on our bill.
Honourable member for Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A new report from the Missing Middle Initiative warns of a lost decade for home ownership. For every 100 new adults, there will be only 12 housing starts intended for ownership. Nearly half of young Canadians say they've considered leaving their city or province because of housing costs. Now the market is seizing up. New home sales in the GTA have hit a 45-year low, putting 100,000 jobs at risk. Builders are laying off workers and fear they may not survive. When will the Liberals adopt our plan to get their bureaucracy out of the way so young Canadians can buy?
The Honourable Minister for Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it is critical that we build housing in the GTA that is affordable. We want to get the industry back building affordable housing for Canadians, certainly in the GTA, but across the country. We're seeing good housing starts in many cities across the country, but we're just getting started with affordability. And we need to deliver with members around this House on the Build Canada Homes Act. No obstruction. Let's get to building.
Hear, hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, young Canadians are being locked out from home ownership. Home ownership is collapsing. For 30 to 34-year-olds, it fell from 60% to 52%. Supply is broken. For every 100 new adults, only 12 ownership homes are built. Sales are crashing, down 45% in the GTA, down 56% in Vancouver. Builders are laying off workers. 100,000 jobs are at risk. 93% of young Canadians are worried. When will the Liberals adopt our plans and get out of the way so young Canadians can buy their first home?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, we have good news for this House. Just today, we tabled the Build Canada Homes Act, and we are hopeful that the Conservatives will not obstruct this bill, as they've been doing with our budget that provides more affordability measures to Canadians so that they can have that dream of buying their first home, so that they can live in affordable housing. That is the dream of all Bramptonians. That is what I hear from my constituents, and this Act will help us meet those goals, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal housing crisis is hitting communities of every size. The City of Red Deer has been asking for a meeting with the Housing Minister for months to address their housing concerns. And despite writing to him 4 times, it seems like Red Deer is too small for the Minister to care to respond. I sure hope Red Deer isn't being ignored because it doesn't deliver Liberal votes like Toronto and Vancouver. Will the minister finally agree to sit down with the City of Red Deer and listen to their issues and admit that mid-sized cities are facing a housing crisis too?
The Honourable Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, once again, Conservatives in Ottawa are out of step with Conservatives in Alberta. Alberta's Minister of Social Services has praised the pace of housing delivery, saying we're getting shovels in the ground and roofs over the head of Albertans. Thousands more low-income Albertans will have a safe, durable house, affordable house that they can count on. Federal Conservatives say they want to work with us, but they can't even work with their own Conservative colleagues on delivering housing for Albertans.
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, the auto sector is facing the biggest challenge in a generation. Unjustified and unjustifiable tariffs from the United States on our auto sector is leaving our auto workers under a cloud of uncertainty. Our government stands behind our auto sector, behind our communities, and the workers that are facing these new realities head-on. Can the Minister of Jobs and Families please tell this House how the newly announced auto strategy will transform Canada's auto industry, protecting our workers today and building the vehicles of tomorrow?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Member of Parliament from Mississauga East Cooksville for his unwavering support for auto workers and the sector. Canada's auto workers and workers are the backbone of our economy, and when our auto sector workers come under attack, our government stands with them and protects them. So today, the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Industry announced Canada's new auto strategy, taking action on what we can control. We're investing $3 billion from the Strategic Response Fund to support the industry, $570 million to support reskilling and upskilling workers. Mr. Speaker, this is how you build Canada strong. We stand together when times are tough, and
the honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
This Liberal minister says that they stand with auto workers. What it looks like is they stand with Donald Trump, because while Donald Trump imposes 10% tariffs on every single vehicle that comes into Canada,
the member may start over. The member may start over. I didn't see anything unparliamentary in that. But the honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
The Liberal minister just said that they stand with auto workers, but it sure looks like they stand with Donald Trump. Let me explain. While Donald Trump imposes 10% tariffs on every single vehicle that comes into Canada, these Liberals have passed an EV mandate that is actually going to give Canadian taxpayer dollars in the form of subsidies to American-made EVs. You actually can't make this up. Less than 5% of Canadian vehicles will qualify for this EV subsidy. Why are they contributing to Donald Trump's Buy American instead of preserving jobs in Canada?
The Honourable Minister, Secretary of State, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If that member and the party opposite thinks that we are on the wrong side of Canadian sovereignty, they've got another thing coming. Our approach is all about Canadian sovereignty. It's all about investing in the companies that invest in us. It's all about embracing the future of electrification. It's all about embracing our workers, who are the best workers in the world. And for the members opposite to talk down Canadian sovereignty or to talk down this sector, this moment of real challenge, when we've got an opportunity to solve it, is really beneath them.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Education for these Liberals, Mr. Speaker. Less than 5% of vehicles manufactured in Canada will qualify for this EV rebate. The rest will come from the United States and other foreign manufacturers. But imagine you're the auto worker in Brampton who is supposed to manufacture the Jeep Compass EV. That job went to the United States. That Jeep EV Compass being manufactured in the United States is actually going to be subsidized by your taxpayer dollars. If you are that auto worker in Brampton, you are looking at this Liberal government and how this is going to benefit Donald Trump and saying, what the hell is going on in Ottawa?
we just have to watch our language a little bit, though. We just have to watch our language. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'll tell you what the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association has to say about today's announcement. We welcome the government's automotive strategy announced today. Funding to support renewed purchase incentives and a robust charging infrastructure strategy will help continue to drive EV adoption, and CVMA members are well positioned to support the shift to electrification through diverse product offerings. That sounds like Canadian sovereign to me, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Northumberland, Clark.
Mr. Speaker, in 2014, under the then Conservative government, the New York Times declared that Canada's middle class was the richest in the world. Now our middle class faces skyrocketing costs and taxes and a stagnant GDP per capita and a declining standard of living. The Prime Minister promised the fastest growing G7 economy by building major projects. However, the major national project, they built none. And they continue to build none. The time to act is now. When will they collaborate with Conservatives and finally bring prosperity back to our great land?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I have good news for my friend. Today, Trans Mountain just said they will be increasing the amount of oil they transport by 10% on the first of 3 optimization projects. That's how we build Canada.
The Honourable Member for Northumberland, Clark.
It always worries me when this government opens up, we have good news, because it rarely is. What we're asking for, what Canadians want, are new pipelines, new projects, and the amount that they've approved, absolutely zero. This government needs to reverse course that has led 2 million Canadians to food banks, admit that their policies have failed, embrace Conservative principles fully, and collaborate with Conservatives to bring prosperity back to our country.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they keep asking for pipelines. We just gave them one. We're building thousands of jobs in Darlington. We're building, they're not.
The Honourable Member for Niagara South.
Mr. Speaker, Bloomberg reports that Canada's economy is on life support. Canada's GDP growth was 0 in November. Productivity continues to fall, and the Bank of Canada expects that just 1% growth next year, with business investment being postponed. How bad is it? Home builders in Niagara have laid off 60% of their framers due to stalled residential construction. The Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7, yet growth is stalled. Will the Prime Minister please adopt Conservative ideas that remove barriers so Canadians can actually build and grow again?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, I know what constitutes good news for Canadians does not always constitute good news for Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. But let me give them another piece of good news. The first major national project this spring breaks ground. Le port de Contrecoeur, une expansion de 60%. Post container port capacity, Mr. Speaker. We're going to build more stuff. We're going to put more stuff on boats. We're going to send more things to more places around the world, expand our trade, put people to work, and build Canada.
The Honourable Member for Barrie, Springwater, Earl Medante.
Mr. Speaker, Canada made international headlines this week, with economists stating that our economy is on life support and the country is already on recession watch. Right. Our per capita GDP is falling, residential construction is flat, businesses are postponing expansion, and this Liberal government's anti-development laws and taxes remain in place. Will the Prime Minister work with Conservatives and introduce a plan to remove the barriers that are preventing Canadians from building, investing, and working?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Speaker, speaking of building, we're building big. The Port of Montreal expansion project is 7,000 construction jobs and over 1,000 permanent. Amazing. Darlington Nuclear is 18,000 good-paying jobs and clean power for generations. LNG Canada and BC mean thousands of jobs and Canadian energy reaching new global market, Mr. Speaker. That's cranes in the ground, paychecks in pockets, and Canada building big.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister sells himself as a master of economics, yet Bloomberg reports that our economy is on life support. The Bank of Canada expects economic growth to shrink in the last quarter and only grow by 1.1% this year. Canadian workers want to build and produce, but the government is holding them back with their anti-development laws and high taxes. The Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7, yet he hasn't delivered, and Canadians are paying the price. When will he listen to our ideas and introduce a plan that gets his government's barriers and tax burdens out of the way so Canadians can build?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Northern and Rural Development.
For 10 long years, the Conservative from Saskatchewan said Canada was broken.
Yes, sir.
They have stifled the opportunity that Saskatchewan had in potash and uranium, oil and gas, Mr. Speaker, and the list goes on. Well, Saskatchewan's on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker.
Yes,
we're going to work hand in hand with Saskatchewan, join the rest of the country, and build a great future. This is about economic and social justice for Saskatchewan. We are going to deliver that, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Yellowhead.
Mr. Speaker, according to Bloomberg, Canada's economy is on life support, and we are now on recession watch. Growth has stagnated, and real GDP is expected to decline. Forestry and logging are down 2.8% for the third month. While the Prime Minister cannot deliver on his trade promises, sawmills in Yellowhead are paying the price. Since the Liberals love our ideas, why don't they remove the industrial carbon tax, fuel standards, and anti-development laws so Canadian businesses can succeed?
The Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, the contrast couldn't be more clear. We like to build, they like to block. We're building our auto sector with the new auto strategy. They're blocking. We're building affordable housing. They are blocking. We are investing in defense. They are blocking. We're making life more affordable for families with the GST tax credit. They are blocking. We like to build. They like to block. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sudbury East, Manitoulin Nickelbelt.
Write him up, Jim.
Mr. Speaker, the latest data from Rosenberg Research is deeply concerning. Manufacturing output is down, forestry has declined for 3 consecutive months, and paper mills in Northern Ontario are closing. The Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7. Instead, his government has failed to remove a single anti-development policy. When will this government adopt our plan to restore economic growth by reducing red tape, lowering taxes, and allowing Canadians to invest, work, and build?
Hear, hear.
Hear.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, as the former Premier of Alberta said, you can't deal with the reality of the tariff threat by pretending it's not there. But the Conservatives would rather obstruct. We have $2.5 billion allocated in Budget 2025 to attack this problem. Please support the budget.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Mountain.
Speaker, we recently hit 100 days since Build Canada Homes was launched, and we're already seeing real momentum on the ground.
Wow.
Projects are moving faster, partnerships are coming together, and communities are seeing concrete progress on affordable housing. Would the Minister for Housing and Infrastructure please update this House on all we've accomplished and what more there is to come?
Yeah. What a great...
Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A big thanks to the member for the question and her great work. We have got right to work with Build Canada Homes, Mr. Speaker. Since the launch, we've been signing major partnerships with provinces and cities. We have 6 major development sites on federal lands. We are delivering over 7,500 homes with over tens of thousands more in the pipeline right now, Mr. Speaker, with the Build Canada Homes Act, which is introduced this morning, which we expect the support of this House on. We're establishing a lean, efficient agency that is 100% focused on delivering affordable housing for Canadians. We ask for your support.
The Honourable Member for Richmond North Vaska. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, we are seeing another Liberal IT fiasco. This system to administer old age security has gone from costing $1.75 billion to $6.5 billion. And even worse, 93% of civil servants are giving it a failing grade. Employees are being ordered to not criticize the software when they talk to the public. Mr. Speaker, how could this fiasco happen? What is the minister going to do about this software? Did the minister sign off on this irresponsible spending?
60-year-old system is not an easy task, and I want to start by thanking the employees at ESDC who are working so hard to make sure that seniors get their benefits on time and in accuracy. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what's happened. 98% of the cases are through, and I will say that we are working diligently on remaining outstanding cases where people have not yet received their benefits who have signed up to do so. If that member opposite has an urgent case, or any member of Parliament has an urgent case, we can accelerate those cases in situations where people are in dire need. Please contact my office.
The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, departmental employees are telling us it's not working. Our seniors built our country and paid taxes their whole lives, and now some of them are waiting up to 8 months to get their money. I'll give you a concrete case. Mr. Martial Lavoie, in my writing, he's still waiting for his check. He actually delayed his retirement because at the time there was a labor shortage. So he kept working, and now that he's finally trying to retire, he can't get his money. Mr. Speaker, what would the minister say to Mr. Lavoie? He's listening right now.
We are happy to help any senior that finds themselves in dire needs. And as I said, we are making progress. This is a very small percentage of the over 7 million Canadians who have been successfully transferred to the Curum system. This system, Mr. Speaker, brings us into the modern age, what Canadians want. In fact, seniors can now apply online and have a fully automated process to get their benefits started. In these cases where things have been done in the old way with paper forms, often there is missing information. There may be other challenges. We have put additional resources to ensuring we get through those cases, and we can help members just like Mr. Lavoie.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, not only is this government stealing land from farmers, it is also closing agri-foods research centres, such as the Sainte-Foy Centre in the riding of the member for Louis-Hébert, which is one of the 7 agri-foods research centres that the Liberals are arbitrarily closing. Canadian science and innovation is built in these centres, which help us be more productive. How can the Prime Minister justify his decision to prioritise consultants and foreign projects rather than our homegrown expertise that feeds Canadians?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It warms my heart that the Conservatives are now concerned about science and research.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm happy to reassure them that the federal government will continue the largest agriculture researcher in this country. In fact, just last month, Mr. Speaker, we invested $9.7 million with the government of Saskatchewan in science and research. We're not going anywhere. We still have 17 centres across the country. We're going to work with our stakeholders. We're going to work with academia, and we're going to make research better than it ever has been. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Nunavut.
In Rankin Inlet, the NDP caucus heard from one Inuk who shared that he has waited for 11 years for a house. There are 17 people in his 2-bedroom unit. His story is all too common in Nunavut. The government is acting on what I've told them. Nunavut will receive 50 more homes added to the 700 originally promised in the budget. This is a good start. Will the minister keep working with Nunavut to address the worst housing crisis in Canada?
You're here. The Honourable Minister for Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. I'm very excited to share that the Government of Canada, the Government of Nunavut, and Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated reached an agreement to deliver up to 750 homes in the territory there. Right. Build Canada Homes will lead this work using innovative factory-built components to get homes ready faster. We're prioritizing Canadian materials, we're supporting Inuit-owned businesses, and creating lots of job opportunities and training opportunities. This partnership will make a real difference on the ground. I thank her for her leadership and helping bring more homes to Nunavut that are much-needed affordable homes, and I encourage all...
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Good news, Mr. Speaker. Canada's energy regulator has rejected Brookfield's plans to send Canadian hydroelectricity to the United States with almost no benefit to the people who live here, and has instead recommended a full licensing process and review. But the final decision still rests with the Minister of Natural Resources. So will that minister commit to accepting the energy regulator's recommendations and ensuring that Canada's national interests always come first?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Let me reassure the member across the aisle that our government is working closely with the government of British Columbia to build an affordable, reliable and clean electricity grid that meets the significant surge in demand we are expecting in the years to come. As the member opposite said, this matter is currently before the Commission of the Canadian Energy Regulator, which makes its decisions independent of the federal government in the best interests of Canada's ability to meet its domestic energy needs.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
The state of emergency in Cross Lake Pimicikamak is now over 40 days long. The Army came, made recommendations, and left. And where is the federal government? Still brainstorming solutions. Meanwhile, evacuees remain stranded in cities without adequate supports. When will Ottawa move past talking points, at a minimum implement the Army's recommendations, and uphold their constitutional responsibilities to support people returning to a safe home?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
I can assure my friend across the aisle that emergency management, our department was in contact with that nation from the commencement of the power outage. We've worked, as has Indigenous Services Canada, to make sure that, firstly, we sent the Canadian Armed Forces, and secondly, that there were sufficient people on the ground to help evacuate and provide benefits to the region. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As International Development Week comes to a close, I know I and many of my colleagues in this place have met with dozens of frontline workers from development organizations who are reeling from the broken promise. During the election, the Liberals promised, the Prime Minister said, quote unquote, we will not cut foreign assistance, we will not cut development assistance, and the budget showed a cut of $2.7 billion. We used to be known in the world. Lester B. Pearson, as former Prime Minister, set the global target for development assistance, and yet here we are falling through the cracks, not delivering. Will the minister commit to reviving the Pearson target?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Speaker, we remain committed to our long-standing international assistance priorities. We will continue to fight poverty, to support gender equality, to strengthen health, food, and education systems, and build climate resilience. We will continue to deliver urgent humanitarian aid abroad. And, Mr. Speaker, the measure of our work is in the partnerships we build to deliver development outcomes at scale. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That concludes question period.
Thursday question.
The motion. I believe as is usually the case on Thursdays, as is always
Thank you, Chair.
case.
Thank you, Minister. Budget said the following, and we've raised a lot of concern about this, as you know. The budget says, Budget 2025 announces the government's intention to propose legislative and regulatory amendments to address integrity issues related to private educational institutions by generally limiting access to the Canada Student Grant for full-time students to students attending public institutions and not-for-profit private institutions within Canada. As I've pointed out, this proposal in the budget would eliminate funding for students who are pursuing essential vocational training, which is only, as it happens, available at private institutions. I do want to note that the Budget Implementation Act, which we're discussing today, does not implement the provisions that were foreshadowed in the budget with respect to this. It makes some changes, but they are very different from what is in the budget. Is the government still committed to the policy as articulated in the budget, or has the government decided to change course on this?
The government is committed to making sure that when young people purchase education, that education actually is accredited and is actually valuable in terms of their productivity and their work experiences. And so this... I am
going to jump in to just insist on a specific answer to a very simple question. Is the government committed to the budget provisions specifically as they were laid out on page 217 of the budget that I just read? Is that still the government's policy?
The government's policy is that we will ensure that the way that we invest through Canada Student Supports means that quality education is the outcome.
Minister, you're a minister of the Crown. It doesn't seem to me that it would be that difficult to say if you stand behind the budget or if you don't stand behind the budget. Do you stand behind the budget, the specific provisions on page 217 in the budget that I just read out? Do you stand behind those provisions?
As I said, the focus of the government is to deliver supports to students so that the expenses they incur for education are actually resulting in quality education that results in labor attachment.
Right. That's a great objective. Do you agree with and stand behind the policy laid out in the budget, page 217?
What I will repeat is that the focus of the government is to make sure that students who are utilizing Canada's student learning supports will result in education that is valuable to them. What we have seen is an increase
Minister,
in institutions.
it's incredible to me that you can't give a simple answer to the question about whether the government still stands behind the policy. Well, so the simple question is, does the government maintain and continue to have as its policy, the policy articulated on page 217 of the budget? It's just yes or no. Do you stand behind that policy announcement in the budget?
The work that the government is doing is to ensure that federal student financial assistance that provided to students is utilized in institutions that will provide quality
That's just not an answer to the question. I think the public can see that. I wonder if I can ask the Deputy Minister, Mr. Thompson, if you don't mind me putting you on the hot seat. You often speak on government policy, even though you're not responsible for making it, you're responsible for implementing it. So is it your understanding that the section I just read from page 217 is still government policy? Is it still government policy?
We have full intention to implement the budget measures as they were laid out by the government.
Okay. I would note that. Thank you. That was a clear response. I disagree with it, and I'm disappointed by it, but it was a clear response. The government still intends to implement those provisions. Do you know when the government expects to implement the provisions that I've just read out, given that they were not included in the Budget Implementation Act? Again, to the Deputy Minister.
Well, listen, I think we all understand that pieces of legislation have to pass this House for the budget to pass so that Canadians can get the relief that all of you have been saying is so essential.
Provisions that I'm talking about are not in the Budget Implementation Act. Mr. Thompson has confirmed that they're still government policy. So when does the government have a timeline for proposing those measures? Again, we oppose the provisions explained in 217, but I think students would like to have some certainty around when their grants will be cut. So what's the plan there?
Well, it's difficult to project a timeline when we see the kind of obstruction in the House for everyday pieces of legislation, including the BIA. So I wouldn't want to put a date on it since some of the levers are in your hands.
We can't be accused of obstructing provisions that have not been presented in the House.
Well, I would imagine that.
Can I just try to get one more question in the minute I have left? Minister, why do you think food cost inflation is twice the level that it is in the United States?
Well, I think we've covered this question in the House quite a bit, and we've got a number of conflating situations in Canada, including, as you would note, the tariffs that we've experiencing as a country. But you can yourself. I think you're from the western part of this country. You yourself can speak to
Minister,
some of the cattle farmers who are actually feeling quite despondent.
How do you think tariffs are impacting food inflation?
Look, there are a number of impacting.
Which tariffs specifically?
The focus here is on the things that we can control, as I said in my speech. And
But
there is
I'm asking
no
about
doubt
food
that
inflation
Canadians are feeling
specifically.
the impact of food inflation. But I will tell you what it's not, if this is where you're going. It is not, and as many economists have shown,
You're
it
the
is
minister.
not
I'm
related.
not asking what it's not. I'm asking what it is. Why is it twice the United States?
Well, food inflation in Canada is directly related to the number of foods that we must import and to the growing challenges of climate change.
Is there an issue with translation?
Appel au règlement, Monsieur le Président. On a entendu que
We are hearing the interpreters saying inaudible. So that is very clear. My colleague is having fun speaking fast and interrupting the minister, but
All participants to be respectful that the meeting must be translated, and that's what I shall say. You've got 1 second.
1 second. Okay. Why is food inflation double in Canada what it is in the United States?
You know what I'd say, Mr. Chair, is that time and time again, when this government puts forward measures to help with the affordability issues for Canadians, we see the opposition delay and stall and use tactics that actually reduce the ability for Canadians to get those supports. That's what I'm focused on, what we can control and how we can help families.
It's not an answer, though.
Oh, yeah.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper bumper, stomper boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room.
Bing bong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.